live and online. It's Sleepless with Steve and the Movie Book Club with your host, Steve Pulaski.
Back and better than ever, Sleepless with Steve, live on YouTube on this Wednesday evening. And look at how nice and bright it is, because daylight savings time was Sunday. And you know what sucks? Like, this is how it should be all year. This is really how it should be all year. We should not have daylight savings time. It's a waste of time, no pun intended, and energy. But you know what would be really nice? If we have to keep it, can we make the hour switch over at 4 o'clock on a Monday afternoon? Preferably go from 4 to 5 p.m. as opposed from 2 a.m. to 3 or whatever it is, 1 a.m. to 2 a.m. on Sunday morning. Something to ponder on this Wednesday night. But Steve Pulaski behind the microphone, of course, accompanied by Joe Viso and Dominic Guanzon. And before I turn it over to my better halves over here, the stronger legs of the tripod, I guess I would say. The people have listened. Again, new setting. I moved. I'm in a new apartment. But the funny thing was, Joe mentioned last week when we had our kind of comeback show after 2 weeks off because I had to move my entire existence over here to a brand new state. He mentioned he goes, I'm going to miss seeing Aquaman in the background. Well, I had time. It was the day after. It was last Thursday. I got off of work. I hung a bunch of stuff, my Bukowski poster, which I don't think you guys could originally see on the original setting. That was on my other wall. But Incredibles 2, how we like them apples. And I was hanging that up thinking, hey, we're going to talk Pixar today anyway. And you can't see it here because my mic bar is in the way, but right there, can't point. That's Spider-Man.
Miles.
That's Spider-Man. That's Miles Morales.
Yeah.
That's Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse.
I could tell that's him falling off the building.
And that's Kingsman.
Oh,
right
nice.
over there in the corner.
Hey, man, I'll take Miles and Miss Incredible over Aquaman any day. They're in better movies anyway, so...
I gave my Aquaman poster to my best friend. I got rid of about 5 posters. Like, I gave him a First Man poster as well, so I kept all the ones I really wanted. But at any rate here, got the patio door open, beautiful sunshine, broke 70 degrees today. It's a good day, and we got one movie that's really dominating the discourse online and on the show today, Pixar's Turning Red. We'll be reviewing that and also diving into a really good article that Joe found. Oh, man, I was just going to say, speaking of brightness over here, man, damn, I'm telling you, we are really saving daylight over here on the first week of daylight savings time.
Yeah.
But moreover, Dominic, you had a pretty big vacation. How are you? Glad to see that you're back in action. Glad to see you got home safely. How was your vacay? You don't have to go into details, but just how was it overall?
It was good. No, yeah. So I went to New York City over the weekend for a cousin's wedding. Shout out to Jason and Nancy. Love you guys both. They're great folks, and they treated it more like a family reunion between the Vietnamese and the Filipinos coming together. And it was not a single hitch wrong, nothing going wrong at all. It's a lovely weekend, and this is my 4th time in New York City. I am basically a New Yorker. That's a lie, but it's my 4th time in New York City for various reasons: school, the IBS Awards, the Irritable Bowel Syndrome Awards from WONC, and but this time it was for a wedding, and this is actually my first time going with my fiance Chelsea, so I'm very happy about that. We actually our time was mostly kind of chained to the family, for lack of a better word, because it was a wedding weekend, 5 days, or 4 days. However, we did have a 1 day, Friday morning and Friday afternoon to really have to ourselves, and we gallivanted around Manhattan, which I always say every time. New York is like the one city where it's completely okay to be tourist as shit, because New York is a parody of itself, particularly in Manhattan. And it was nice. We get to visit Greenwich. We got to see Stonewall Inn. We got to see the equally as historic Nintendo building. No, we got to see some sights. It was real fun.
And he got me a Jets hoodie. Shout out my buddy over here. Thank you.
Okay, I'll get it when Joe talks, but you
don't
have your
have
Jets hoodie.
You don't have to, but I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
We do have it.
I'm continuing my collection of out-of-market sports teams for which I don't root for. Joe, how are you?
I'm doing very good. I've been doing some spring cleaning around my place. I know the bed doesn't look like I've been doing that, but that's because it's my bed. I clean it like on every Saturday morning, and it becomes a mess throughout the week. But I reorganized my DVD collection, Blu-ray collection. It's actually like when I first moved in here, I was like, I don't need like a stand. And then I started moving in more and more of my Blu-rays that were from my mom's house. And it's like my desk was just like, you guys never saw it, but like literally from to my left to my right, there was like a stack of Blu-rays about like this high that I would just kind of like put under my desk, but like I needed to sit here and like, you know, move around and do stuff. But I finally have a DVD stand. I bought a filing cabinet that's to my right down here that you can't see. I did my files because of tax season and everything, so I figure it'd be a good time to reorganize everything.
Filing cabinets are so satisfying.
It really is. Like, I'm becoming an adult. It sucks to some people, but, you know, I'm like 26 at this point, right? Yeah, 26. It's like, it's about time I finally do this kind of stuff.
For sure. Yeah, when I moved, I basically, the last several months, gotten a lot of documents. I've basically distilled my life down to like eight folders.
Yeah.
You know, taxes and documents and everything like that, stuff you want to have on hand. That's an important thing to do.
Yeah.
So credit to Joe over here being responsible. Is your filing cabinet locked? I have to ask that.
No.
I gotta get one with a key, and then you put it on your key ring, and you feel important.
There we
go.
That'll be the next step. Once I get when I get my own place, I'll do that eventually.
That's my pro tip there. We'll dive into Turning Red, though. This is on Disney Plus. No extra surcharge for this movie. The third Pixar movie in a row that they've put on Disney Plus. Excuse me, without any extra surcharge or anything like that. So I said it last week briefly, and I think I even mentioned it in my review. I'm not going to pretend. People always ask me movie questions and stuff. I don't know how the hell this is profitable. I don't know how the hell these Pixar movies turn a profit anymore when they're not charging extra for them and they're just releasing them on Disney Plus and they cost 9 figures. I have no idea how this is profitable. I'm going to say that right now. I haven't looked into it. I don't even know if there's really many details on the matter to begin with. But Turning Red, Domi Shi is the director of it. You might remember her. She was the director of the Bow short film that premiered before Incredibles 2. That was a very good short. That was a very emotional short. I was not expecting it. Just when you think Pixar has exhausted all the kind of inanimate objects, they make you cry because of a sentient dumpling. You know, that was a beautiful short. Different to start Incredibles 2, but a very good short no less. And she's very much cut from a similar cloth, I think, in a way, to Pete Docter. And it was Pete Docter with whom she worked on her first Pixar credit. She was a story artist on Inside Out. And I've said before, time and time again, I think Pete Docter is the finest director Pixar has. The guy responsible for Up, responsible for Inside Out, and responsible for some of the studio's best offerings, the most elite offerings, Soul even too. He's a wizard when it comes to storytelling, and just he's on a different level. He's on a notch above when it comes to like the cerebral qualities of Pixar. And that's really something that I think helped her out a lot too, working close with Pete Docter. But now if she gets a crack at her first feature film for Pixar, that's pretty damn good. I'll say that much. Pretty damn good, Turning Red. This one, as Martina McBride once said in her popular 2002, I want to say, hit single, this one's for the girls. But I also think it's a pretty good crowd pleaser in and of itself. But this one is absolutely geared more towards women, more towards young girls too. And it's a very good story. It's a story with multiple layers to it. I called in my review, which you can read at stevepulaski.com. I called it in my review, Pixar's horniest movie to date. There's an actual line of dialogue where a 13-year-old girl tells her mother, "I like gyrating." It is a very horny Pixar movie. There's a bit of twerking in it too, but it's not played for corniness. It really isn't. It's played on a humanization level throughout the movie.
Yeah.
It is one of the only animated movies I can think of, at least American animated movies, that I think tackles puberty in a very accessible way. Puberty, and in this case too, PMS. I can't think of the actual quote. I have it in my review, but before I turn it over to you, Dom, for your thoughts over here, that's what it is. I think one of the most radical sentences ever uttered in a Disney property is May, the lead character, voiced by Rosalie Chang, when her mother voiced by Sandra Oh, asks her, "Has the red peony blossomed?" I think that's got to be one of the most radical Disney lines in the company's storied history. But it's very good. I'll touch on this more for criticisms. Kind of like a teenager going through puberty, it's occasionally chaotic and it occasionally has a lot on its plate that it wants to address. But I think when it slows down to those very human beats, especially a movie that details a complicated yet loving relationship between a mother and a daughter. We really haven't seen that from Pixar since Brave, and nobody talks about Brave, despite it being pretty damn good, in my opinion, too. There's a lot to like about this movie, and Dom, I want to hear your thoughts on Turning Red.
Yeah, Turning Red really is a continuation of a trend I've been noticing in Pixar films. I first saw it with Inside Out, but it really became apparent in Soul. I haven't seen Luca, but I have seen pretty much every Pixar movie since Finding Dory, Unbroken. So Cars 3, Coco, blah, 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 since then, and everyone in between except Luca. But it's still, the trend has been pretty much trending towards two major things. One, which is getting rid of the villain. There's no clear villain anymore. It's a lot more personal. I mean, it's all personal, but rather more
intimate,
inward problems, more complex issues, more things that you can, less tangible, but somehow more personal at the same time. At the same time, we're also seeing something very kinetic. Turning Red is one of the like high octane Pixar films I have personally witnessed. This may just be my memory serving me incorrectly. And obviously every Pixar film, they're cartoons, man. Every Pixar film is gonna have some crazy moments, high energy moments, but Turning Red from the get-go, despite being one of the most grounded movies taking place in real life 2002 Toronto, still it is off the wall. That beginning is actually really explosive, where you are just going straight into it. Even comparing it to like The Incredibles, where it's like, oh yeah, here's like the superhero beginning, and like we're going off on this chase scene. No, it's actually somehow more chaotic than that, with just how frantic the back and forth is. That's not necessarily a bad thing. But it is definitely a trend that I've been seeing on those two avenues. And I'm actually the kind of the Inside Out that I saw, starting with Inside Out, seeing that trend of more emotional issues being addressed, something without a very clear villain. Not to say that there isn't an antagonist, but something that isn't very clear evil, like in freaking Frozen, where you have like, I'm the bad guy all along. It's like, okay, come on. But that one I'm very much loving. I want to see more of that. We could ride that trend for a long, long time, and I would be totally for it. The kineticness is actually more of a neutral observation, which can go either way. And I do wonder if we've hit our ceiling with Turning Red. But regardless, those two things, and then of course on top of that, just seeing the classic Pixar formula, despite those two things, still at the core of it is very much a Pixar film. And seeing it with this kind of new, I hate to say with a coat of paint, but the Asian representation and female led cast very, very much taking charge, and is kind of is a new coat of paint, and just refreshing at the same time. Goes to show that, hey, yeah, maybe we can do these freaking stories. And it's really glad to see, and I very much enjoyed these movies. So I'll leave it there at first. But Joe, you want to take it off?
No,
take off from there.
Yeah, I'm glad you kind of touched on refreshing, because this was just refreshing to see from Pixar. I know, like, just 2 years ago we had Soul, and that was my favorite movie of that year. But it is refreshing to see Pixar do this every once in a while, where we have something more personal, like you're saying. There's no villain or anything. There's no big bad. I really love when they do that, because to me, they end up being some of my favorite Pixar movies. I loved Inside Out for that reason. That it was just like...
Luca was pretty grounded, too.
Luca was also very grounded as well, you're right. Soul was grounded, where it was like, there was no real villain, it's just this guy wants to get back to his body. I mean, I guess you had the accountant, like, guy that, like, was trying to, like, account for the souls, sure. But it's not like they had to stop him or he was trying to, like, destroy something. No, this is just, this girl is dealing with becoming a woman. And I love when Pixar takes ideas like that, like, a kid, developing, like, their emotions or, like, losing an emotion of some sort. And they just take that one idea, and it's not like they're like, okay, we're just going to take that idea and just run with it, and that's it. Like, because to me, that's what Onward was, where it was like, hey, we took this idea of a fantasy world, and that's the gimmick. That's all. When it's like, there was this whole great story about, like, the loss of a father that I felt the third act of that movie was the only good part about it, where they actually touch on that the most. This movie, throughout the whole thing, does really play with the idea of, when a girl eventually does become a woman, she hits like 13, 14 years old and starts experiencing, like, everything from, puberty and onward. What kind of relationships does she start? Like, how does she interact with her friends? How is she going to interact with her parents? What happens to her with school? What happens to her with, like, just everything else? What happens to her with boys now all of a sudden? And it was really cool to see. This honestly felt like, I don't want to butcher the director's name here. Let me make sure. Dami Shi. That's how you say it?
That's my best guess.
That's my best. I should have said the pronouncer ahead of time, but I believe that's correct.
No, you're good.
Interview.
You're good. I see she wrote the story, she directed it, and after seeing Bao, it's just like, this really does feel like her vision of a slice of life movie with some fantastical elements thrown in there that really, it's honestly just a great sight to see from a Pixar director, because it's like, just like the people she's worked with, I'm actually really excited to see where she goes next with her next few Pixar movies. Or even more Pixar movies. I don't know how many more she wants to do, but it's just like, between Bao and this, it's like, okay, trajectory-wise, you're going up for me. And it's like, I can't wait to see what you do next. I love the stories you have here. I love the creativity you put into the stories, along with the visuals that go along with them, to where it's just, damn, is this already like one of my favorite movies this year, and we just started 2022? I know some people aren't as crazy about this movie as I was, but like right when I got done playing it, I watched this Sunday night. I was like, holy shit, I think that actually might be one of my favorite movies this year. And I really had to like sit down and think about it. I went over like some of the notes I took and everything, and it's like, there are some issues I do have. There are some critiques I have, but it's just, in terms of just animation, Pixar films in general, and just, stuff to like teach children and also teach some adults, which we'll get into later, about like, womanhood, and just like, actually we should be more open about these things to help people. I think this film does a lot of great stuff in terms of storytelling, and also just commentary about, just growing up as a kid, or as a girl, I should say.
It really is the I'm glad you mentioned Onward, because this really does feel like a much better executed Onward, where they really, at a fundamental level, was like, hey, we don't need to do, like, the fantastical element doesn't need to be the whole world, and then we just let that sit in the background. Let's just focus on, okay, the girl, like that's it. That's the driving force, which is not a wholly original idea, but when you contrast to Onward, it really shows just kind of the fundamental flaws there. Not that Onward was a bad, horrible film by any means. Yeah. It'd be a damn good Illumination film, I'll say that. But for Pixar, it's not so much. But it's, really, the
Onward felt like Pixar trying to do DreamWorks, and like, Onward wasn't a bad movie, but Onward was like average, and that's like bad in the lingo of Pixar, given the standards they've set for themselves. There's been this. Onward's going to go down as one of the most forgotten ones.
There's been a recent thing with Pixar movies where it's just like, and luckily, like, the ones that have been coming to Disney Plus so far, I would say, are on the better end, especially Soul and this one. Luca as well is very good. If you haven't watched it, you should. But like, there was like a period of time, and Steve and I talked about this when we reviewed Coco, back in the radio days, where it was just like, they started doing sequels or prequels with like Monsters University, and it's just like, these weren't really Pixar movies anymore. They really just felt like Disney run-of-the-mill now sequels or animated films. And like, of course, in general speaking, like, yeah, that might be actually good. Like, a good, like, a run-of-the-mill Pixar movie is still better than most animated movies, but it's not what we expect from Pixar. We get stuff like Good Dinosaur and stuff. Go ahead.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. There was a time, though. I mean, people forget where Pixar was heavy with the sequels. It kind of started, I think, with the one nobody wants to mention, Cars 2. But you had like Toy Story 3, which did come before it. You had Cars 2. Then you had Monsters University. Then you had Finding Dory a few years later.
Oh my God, I forgot about Finding Dory.
Cars 3. Like, they were really going hard, and most of those are pretty good. Most of those are pretty damn good. I think Monsters University is kind of an improvement over Monsters Inc. in some aspects too. And Finding Dory I like more than Finding Nemo. That's my most controversial Pixar take. But yeah, they've kind of come back now to doing more original stories, and we'll see. We'll see what Lightyear is.
Yeah.
Lightyear, we'll see when that comes out in June. We'll kind of see what the hell they're going to do with that one, too.
Because I'm concerned about the movie as well, because it's just like, Pixar has also been doing the thing of, we got to release 2 movies a year. And it's like in 2018 and 2017 is when they started doing this. And it's like 1 year, in the same year, we got Coco, and then we got The Good Dinosaur. And it was just like, okay, like these 2 films, like Good Dinosaur, say whatever you want about it. I don't think it's that good, but Coco was an amazing film compared to that.
It's like when Call of Duty was releasing 2 games every year, or like maybe like one and the other. It was like, here's the one with the studio that you like, here's the one with the studio that you don't like.
Here's the
and
B
it's
team.
like, yeah, exactly. And you kind of feel bad for that because there's animators and whoever just sweating away at whatever. But regardless,
not to go too deep into this rabbit hole too, but I just want to throw out there as well, because I just learned this like 2 days ago. The one thing that does give me hope for Lightyear, though, Pete Docter is writing it.
Yeah,
he's not directing it, but he's writing it.
You know what? That and every trailer so far looks amazing. The soundtrack,
it does look
playing
good.
David Bowie, and just the visuals. I'm like, this. It doesn't look like they're just trying to cash in on Buzz Lightyear. Of course, like at the base of it all, sure, that could be it. But it very much looks like, no, we actually had a vision going into this. We want to actually make a movie like this.
You were pivoting,
pivoting back to Turning Red. I think it was really genius. The more that I tuned into this, and we may even parlay, maybe getting ahead of myself with what we're going to talk in the second half of the show, but I'll say it anyway, is that I wasn't actually too interested in this movie at first, because it was beyond just the Pixar heading. I was like, oh, it's about a girl who's Asian and she turns into a panda, and that's like the shtick. Oh, okay, cool. I feel like I've seen that before. But as the movie went on, I was actually impressed by how much depth there is to that panda shtick. Not on a practical level. At one point, she learns how to double jump, which I thought was just funny. But anyway, emotionally and contextually, the panda can be representative of so many things.
Yep.
That is actually, even if you're just a kid, just kids in general, girl, boy, doesn't matter. Obviously leaning towards girls for obvious reasons, but really just that panda can be anything. It can be a lot of things, I should say. It can be family. It can be your past. It can be just adolescence. Yes, of course, they did essentially say periods, whatever, but that could easily just be boys figuring out, their parts. That's what it is. It's freaking puberty, man. It's brutal and it's scary when you're a kid, and scary when you're an adult talking to your kid. If you come out with a very, very timidly, but it actually had a lot of depth, and the family aspect, I thought it would be overplayed. But honestly, it really wasn't. The fact that we get so much depth and so much excellent performance from Sandra Oh's mother, and then when you get a mild spoiler, but when the extended family comes in as well, it actually felt really epic.
Yeah,
not gonna lie.
I'm not.
And
dude,
like a super team of family members, of aunts and grandmas.
The
they made a
aunts
super
wind up
team out of just average family members.
It felt like the Avengers coming out to play when in one particular scene. It's like, God damn, okay, we're going. All right.
It's so funny because Shang-Chi kind of touches on some of the elements of this film with the expectations you have to your parents and everything. But then when you get to the third act of that film, they introduce a giant monster and then you have to fight it, and the whole idea of parents expectations of their children and everything gets thrown right out the window. They introduce a giant monster, and yet the heart of the story is still in that third act, throughout it. And
the giant.
Go ahead.
Yeah, not to spoil anything, but the giant monster directly plays into into this problem.
No, it really
and
does.
that is what I was really that's what I really appreciated about it. At the end of the day, is that all these things that could have easily been gimmicky in the hands of a less capable screenwriter or a writer, is actually brought together really well here in what if this really is just the full concept of Bao, at the absolute heart of it. Even though it's about a son in Bao, whatever, looking at it neutrally, it's this pretty much the exact same themes in some aspects, which is really, really cool to see, because I freaking loved Bao. And again, you may think, oh, this is a girls movie, this is an Asian movie, if you have if you have good emotional intelligence, or even decent emotional intelligence, you'll see right past that, and you will enjoy this film for really what it is, which is about the family, which is about growing up. It's the most textbook coming of age, but what a bunch of fresh bells and whistles that I think makes it really, really engaging. Yeah. We did lose Steve for a second here, but Joe, did you want to take it?
If you have just as you were saying, you have any basic human, man, if you just know how, if you ever spoken with another woman, it's just what's it like growing up as a woman? And it's just they tell you, and you can see, there are times I hang out with, half of my friend group are females. So I've gotten a female perspective of growing up in high school, growing up in middle school, college, all that stuff. I've gotten their perspective of all that stuff. That there were moments in this film, when she, there's a whole thing that she wants to go see this concert with her friends. It's a boy band. And they hit every note when it comes to a boy band coming to town for one night only, that you and your friends need to be there. Anytime I talk to them, it's when the Jonas Brothers, Big Time Rush, One Direction, or Bieber came to town. It was they hit every note that I've heard from these girls, to the PowerPoint, to finding the money, how they're gonna get the money, to the excuses they gave their parents when they wouldn't let them go, to sneaking out and everything. It was just oh my god, I'm not a girl. I didn't do this. If I told my parents I want to go see Foo Fighters, I'm a guy, my parents were yeah, do guy stuff. So, I didn't have to experience that. But just seeing that played out on screen and just recalling what they've said to me, it's wow, I feel personally, just from hearing what they told me, this captures any 13-year-old, 14-year-old girl's experience. And it's not to say it's not alienating guys or even boys from this movie. No, there are moments, man, it's just tension with your parents. Anybody can relate to that when you're growing up as a teenager, man. That's the whole point. You're going through hormones, you're having mood swings and everything. That there were moments in too, it's that's understandable. It's such a well crafted story and script here. It's it's to me, it's the same way I looked at Ratatouille, where I know this is you're probably wait, where are you going with this? But to me, Ratatouille, joke wise, I don't really laugh that much when watching Ratatouille, but it's the story, it's Remy's journey that makes me, that's top 5 Pixar movies for me. Where this is the same thing here, where it's just I'm not gonna lie, the first 10 minutes of this movie where she's interacting with her friends, they're all screaming and running around, I found that to be very annoying. I really did. But what made me love this movie is the journey that May goes through, her arc from the beginning of this film to the end of this film, the relationship she builds with her friends, and the relationship she takes with her mother by the end of the film, that I was no, this is just great storytelling done in animation form.
To your earlier point, when I'll just say real quick, when this plot is fully in motion, and then I just realized, wow, these girls are really prioritizing seeing a boy band for one night over potentially this curse affecting the rest of your life. But hey, isn't that childhood? Isn't that childhood where it's this going to this concert or this convention, or
I had to get Halo
going
Reach
to this
at
party
midnight for a specific reason.
If I don't go to this, my life is over. I don't care if about all this other.
That's 2002 specifically. That's 2002 specifically.
This was time wise. This was perfect for us. This really was our freaking childhood.
Yeah,
wasn't it?
No, it was cool actually. That's another thing too. It was just man, I love that this film took place in 2002. It wasn't modern. It wasn't 80s. It wasn't even the recent 90s trend that we're doing. I'm yes, early 2000s, baby. Here we go. Now I can talk about I grew up with this Tamagotchis and everything.
And I mean, like the apparent thing was, because I've seen some discourse online, like, why was this set when it was? And I mean, obviously it relates to the director's childhood. I mean, obviously she's a young woman, but it's also too, I think it's nice. I mean, there's some things I think that, you know, the story carries over to the modern day, absolutely. But like, it's kind of nice this movie, they don't have phones.
Yep.
It's just kind of nice that they don't have technology, which adds a whole other complicated layer would add a complicated layer to the story, at least, you know? So like, because I mean, think about it too. Like, if they had phones and this was set in 2021 or 2022, if they had phones, they could theoretically live stream the concert in a way, or that would probably be an option. So it takes away that, like, gotta be there, be present urgency.
There's also the thing that, like, her mom being overprotective. She would have been like, there's so many times, like, you know, like, you have the thing of her bringing the pads to the school. That would have been a simple, do you need me to bring this to the school, and like take a photo of it, rather than like sneaking in and trying to like find her daughter within a classroom and be like, meet me outside.
It would have limited some of the more climactic moments.
Yeah, that too. Yeah,
that absolutely. You know, but the last thing I'll say, and we'll take our Zoom sponsored intermission here too, is that, like, and another reason I keep going back to Pete Docter over here as well is just like, this is at its core, Turning Red at its core. It's Pixar once again making a very accessible metaphor out of something completely normal, but still difficult to put in words, and something we're not very good at talking about as humans. Like Inside Out. Inside Out's very much in the same realm as this because of its cerebral aspect and the fact that, like, our emotions are hard to juggle on top of being hard to discuss. And they present it in a way that's very relatable, in a way that's very accessible. And as Dom intelligently put earlier, I think the core of the movie really is puberty, but you can absolutely read the panda as multiple different things. Your past, tradition, which is a big component of this movie as well. Tradition, being bound to something, you know, your old self, even to your messy side. Malin's got an excellent monologue at the end of the movie, I don't want to ruin, that talks about the panda's purpose. In broad strokes, but enough to concretize the actual purpose of the panda. I really love that final monologue.
You know that meme where it's just like your brain at night, it's like, hey, what's up? Remember that one thing you did 13 years ago? That's the panda as well. It's just like reminding you of like all that stuff.
True.
I really felt like I was witnessing traumatic episodes every time the mom did stuff.
Oh, yeah.
It wasn't exactly that, but that was pretty damn close. That'll do it.
We'll take a Zoom sponsored break, come back with some of our critiques of Turning Red, our final thoughts on Turning Red, and as well as people turning red over the online debate about the new Pixar movie Turning Red. And maybe there's a critical double standard at play. A couple film critics got their ass put on full blast last week. If you happen upon social media, there was like a social media lynching of a couple critics. It was something to witness. Every year, like you know, we thought Marshall Fine was the one who originally died on this sword when he gave the first negative review of The Dark Knight Rises back in 2012. As far as like film critic mass hysteria, like death threat thing, I don't think this was that bad, but it was a big outrage point. So we'll touch on all that as well. This is a total chock full Pixar show. Pixar always dominates whenever they release a movie. We'll be back in about 60 seconds. Keep it locked. You're watching Sleepless with Steve, YouTube. We're back after that Zoom-sponsored intermission. It's Sleepless with Steve live on YouTube. We are talking about Turning Red. Lots of things to talk about with this movie. There are some critiques. I think that are justifiable for this movie, and it has really nothing to do with content. I think the content's handled very well here. I think the themes are handled very well and presented very well. But it's got that common problem, I think, that's present in a lot of these animated movies these days. It's got that common problem of just sometimes being too manic for its own good. Now, you got to be careful with this, like with this critique, because here's the thing. It is fitting in some ways because of the subject matter. It's fitting because of the fact that we're dealing with a 13-year-old girl. And I don't care if you're a boy or a girl, 13 years old, that's a hell of an age.
Yeah.
That's a hell of an age. That's a tornado of an age. That's the age where you're really starting to kind of like, you have your personality, but you're trying to figure out where the hell you belong. And your body's doing weird stuff too, which doesn't help matters at all. So this movie kind of reflects the messiness of a teenager, of a very young teenager. And it gets manic at times. I don't think it ever really truly loses sight of itself, but it just gets a little chaotic. As Joe said too, that opening 10 minutes is kind of a hurricane.
Yeah.
Of like getting introduced to May, getting introduced to her, the setting, her parents, her dynamic, and everything like that. What rescues it, though, because that's really my only real lurching complaint. What rescues it, though, is kind of when it just slows itself. Because usually whenever there's about 5 minutes of just hell breaking loose, it's usually followed by a very poignant or special moment of something. Even the battle, like at the end, when when May really starts to embrace her panda and her like impulsive nature, and it really is to the chagrin of her mother. Even during that scene, as explosive as it is, there's a heartwarming quality to it that ends it, and then there's like a special like heated exchange between the two of them that keeps the movie grounded, as we've said before, as Joe specifically pointed out. It keeps it grounded, but like any 13-year-old, it's occasionally messy. It's occasionally a little too rambunctious, and that's probably the only lurching complaint I have. Dom, what say you?
I'm even just going to build off of that and say that on a more technical level, not that, again, not an animator, but I am very curious about animation, and I like divulging in that world just for fun. But I really want to emphasize the kinetic is the word of the week for me, but it really was. And like compare, like just the way the characters would sometimes move unnecessarily overly kinetic, where it's like, man, not even Ed, and Eddie was this. That was like more elegant. You know what I'm saying? It was, and I know this is a very big contrast because Ed and Eddie was the last, big piece of animation that was a series that was hand-drawn animation, classically animated. Not that I'm saying one is better than the other, computer generated or not. No, but man, there really was some crazy ass for something that was seemingly more grounded, and it was in terms of its setting and all that, not as fantastical overall. Just this one point of the panda. Damn, dude, this like just the aunties coming in. I'm like, okay, I thought you were supposed to be old. Like shit. Okay, cool. We're doing like hyper poses or whatnot. It's hard to make this point without exact examples being able to show on the screen. But if you were to take any 10-second clip of big action, actually, I take that back. It really is the contrast of, or it feels like it's being overly kinetic in places where it doesn't need to be. And this is a hyper detailed point. It's really just more of a pedantic way of making Steve's point. But I really was like, because I do have the luxury of doing it on Disney Plus, but comparing that to like Toy Story 2, where it's like, okay, these are toys, and it's more fantastical because it's cartoons, or I should say it's toys. Like they're like all the characters are freaking toys. Somehow it was more smooth than some of the stuff the girls were doing. The movements, it was snappier, I should say, snappier, more herky jerky, and it wasn't. Let me say, it's not poorly animated. It's not a quality thing, but rather just the way that they went about it was like to the max, more than I think I've seen in any other Pixar film. Soul was actually getting there, very much so, and its humor was like it was getting to like, not as I should say, it was like some neck breaking speed of like family-esque level cutaways, I should say. The jokes themselves were not like Family Guy level, which is derogatory, but just the cuts between back and forth. Again, hard to make these examples. This really should be like a video essay where like I can show the examples. But do you guys feel what I'm saying here? I'm saying with all that?
I hear you. I hear you. Yeah, no, I definitely get some of the more finer points of it. It's hard to say it without specific examples, but I get the wavelength you're on. Joe, any big critiques for Turning Red?
I mean, I'm kind of there with you guys. Like, I mean, I was bringing this up when you had to step away for a minute, but yeah, that first 10 minutes, it's so quick, all the information they're throwing at you and all the spouting that's going on, that I was just like, all right. I'm like, I didn't think it was going to be this kind of animated film. Hold on, let me go grab something to drink real quick. Let me sit myself down. All right, I thought this was going to be like Pixar, like taking me nice and easy. Why the hell are they screaming in the first 10 minutes already? And like, yeah, you have those animators doing that whole, damn, we sure are animating at the beginning of this 10 minutes. It's just like, they're like throwing arms, jumping up and down, dancing. I'm like, ooh, man, I'm like, I did not expect Pixar to go this route. I was like, damn.
There was no singing pigeons, though, bless it. So
Yeah.
There was no singing pigeons.
If they were singing
Rapping
pigeons, I would turn this movie
rapping
off.
pigeons, rather.
But no, once you get past that first 10 minutes, and I'm not even saying like that 10 minutes wasn't like brutal to sit through or anything. Don't get me, like, I'm making it sound that way. I'm playing it up more for jokes. It was just like, oh shit, I did not think this was going to be that kind of movie. I was expecting more of a Pixar type movie here. It's just getting you in the mood, getting you in, I guess actually getting used to the idea that you're going to be hanging out with a 13-year-old for an hour and 43 minutes now. So you might get used to just them screaming and yelling all the time. Because, I mean, as the film went on, I grew to like the characters more. I grew to like this. I started to love the story. I started loving everything that was going on. I will say though, yeah, the only other critique I have is that the humor is just kind of up and down for me. Like, there's sometimes I'm laughing my ass off, like when she had to present the PowerPoint on why she needs to go to see her favorite band in the whole world, and there's just other jokes too. I'm just like, okay. I mean, like, sure. But yeah, no. Other than that, though, I don't have too many other critiques. I think this was a very well done film.
Here's a critique. We do not get a full four-town album. Instead, we only get 3 songs written by they're actually written by the O'Connell siblings. But you may know them better as Phineas and Billie Eilish, but I'm going to call them the O'Connell siblings. But no, but seriously, actually, that was a joke. I actually liked some of that music. I actually was like, is this actually like in sync? No, it's their original songs. But I was impressed by how much Phineas was able to capture.
I don't want to derail too much, but I'll tell you right now, one of my guiltiest pleasures in life, I do like a handful of boy band songs. I do like quite a few. Like, it's some, like, some of the popular ones, like, Bye 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 in Sync. I always love that one. You know which one is great, and I have to mention this right now. Is the song by, and I don't know if these guys were a little like before our time a little bit. If you remember the band 98 Degrees, remember the boy band 98 Degrees?
I think so, yeah.
They had a song called I Do, and it came on MTV Classic about a year ago. And man, I bumped the hell out of that for like a month. I bumped the hell out of that. I like boy band, like some of their music, not everything, but I do turn up What Makes You Beautiful by 1D as well. I do like that song, and the Big Time Rush theme song. The Big Time Rush theme song will always slap.
Dude, honestly, yeah, Big Time Rush's theme song does actually slap. That and Windows Down, I actually like catch myself like, fuck it, I'm gonna throw it on.
I do like the melodic, like the slow one. That's like that 98 Degrees song I just mentioned too. I do have a soft spot for boy bands. Four Town, I would have taken a 4 Town EP. I don't know about an album, but I would have taken a 4 Town EP. The Spiral movie should have had a 21 Savage album. This could have had a 4 Town EP at the very least. But we want to go into star ratings because we do have an article I want Joe to talk about. I'll start, I suppose. I give it 3 stars. I did enjoy this movie quite a bit. I also we didn't mention him too much, but I really did like when they showed up. I liked May's friends. I liked May's friends a lot, and I especially liked Priya, whose name I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce. Who the actress's name? I'm not going to do her disrespect and butcher it, but I liked her quite a bit. I liked her deadpan delivery, and I liked her kind of reticent attitude towards things. I liked May's friends quite a bit too. I like spending time with them because they remind me a lot of my own friends as well. But yeah, I give it 3 stars. I think it blends a lot of things too. A lot of traditionalist sort of folkloric fiction, hormonal under and overtones, which I do appreciate. I like when a movie can get a little taboo, especially a kids movie like that.
Oh yeah.
And there's also, I don't know if you mentioned this when I stepped away for a minute or what, but I also have to say too, with the art style of this, there's definitely a very welcomed anime influence here.
Yes.
Too. That's very attractive.
It very much reminded me of the Teen Titans show that we grew up with, where it would switch between American animation and then anime style at certain points. The dramatic zoom-ins of characters' faces and stuff, hidden emotions. I thought that went amazing with the art style here. And thank God Pixar, they've learned to animate humans better and better with each movie, I think.
In that context, a lot of the snappiness actually kind of makes more sense.
I guess so, actually.
A little bit.
Some of the quickness too, but it's 3 out of 4 stars for me. Again, you can watch it on Disney Plus, and read my review at stevepulaski.com. Bounce over to Joe now. Joe, your final thoughts on Turning Red?
Yeah, this was a great time at home. I almost said great time at the movies. I really enjoyed it. It was a surprise because I'm not gonna lie, when I saw the trailer for this, I was just kind of all right. I'm sure. I guess the new Disney original animated stuff is just going to be surpassing Pixar at this point. But then this came out, I watched it, I was like, never mind, Pixar is still, they got game when they want to play. I very much enjoyed it. I thought it was a refreshing story to see, especially from an animated studio, depicting all the stuff that it did in this movie and going as hard as it did with it too. So for me, it is 3.5 out of 4 stars.
Dom, send us home at least for part 1 of Turning Red here.
The Pixar arsenal is got some of the most heart of any studio that I have seen, and really Turning Red maintains that flame bright through here through 2022. This movie is unabashedly about growing up, all the change that you're facing, and reconciling that with family tradition and breaking free from that in some aspects, or we're learning to just reconcile with it and live with it. And the thing that will make me give 3.5 out of 4 stars here that really drove that point home is when the dad gets involved. Yeah. This is definitely this is absolutely a story about a mom and a daughter. Just quantitatively, that is what it's mostly about. But Pixar did the right thing, and they didn't just have the dad be the oaf, be the stupid dad who just does stupid things in the corner. You get that vibe a little bit. They play into that trope for most of the movie, but he comes in at a pivotal point, and just that inclusiveness, hey, dads can be part of their daughters' lives too, just so you know, and stuff like that. Just the totality of that, I thought was a story detail that hardly a detail because it came at a pivotal point, but still, it can be often overlooked, and that really drove it home for me amongst many other things. So yeah, 3.5 out of 4 stars for Turning Red.
Good stuff. Good stuff. I also want to say too, I don't think I mentioned it earlier, but I always remembered she's name too. I always remembered her name because when Bao came out in Before Incredibles 2, I don't think I mentioned this during the show. I know I mentioned it in my review though. If you've seen that short, you remember it, you know what I'm talking about, because it's kind of about a mother grappling with being an empty nester. Mm-hmm. I saw that short about 2.5 weeks before I moved out of my parents' house, and it was not a very good time to watch that damn thing.
No.
That was a terrible. That was a series. That was probably one of the most emotional I've ever gotten to a Pixar short. And just the time, I think I could probably watch it now, maybe be mostly dry-eyed, but the amount of emotion that thing elicited, I was just really grateful I didn't see that with my mother. You know what I mean? It was oh my God, this is brutal. It was great, but it was man, crying to a dumpling over here, and I'm 22 years old. But at the time. But moreover, Joe found a very good article about the Turning Red debacle, sort of, that's been on social media, and kind of the double standard, the alleged double standard about film criticism when it comes to Turning Red. So let's take a couple minutes to touch on this. I always love when the industry that I hold so near and dear to my heart comes under attack, oftentimes for deserved purposes. So I always like when there's a little bit of a pot stirring right here. What you got, Joe? What's the angle? What's the bend you want to take on this?
So, I mean, I'm just going to kind of give like an overview of it and like, kind of go into like my thoughts on the whole thing as well. I mean, you could kind of guess where I'm going to lean based on the review we just gave and that I was like glowing about this film. But when Turning Red came out, and if you've been on social media over the weekend, you probably saw tweets like this all over the place. Actually, one of the tweets featured in this article I saw when it was only like 10,000 likes. Now it's at 300,000, so that was pretty funny to see happen. But there is double standards in the film criticism here, where a lot of people are saying that, the new film is totally unrelatable and wildly inappropriate for children. And oftentimes this is coming from a bunch of males, unfortunately. And there are a lot of male critics or just male viewers on Twitter or male YouTubers and everything, whether they're just trying to, cater to their audience by bashing on a movie like this or not. They're coming out here and they're like sharing their like opinions on what they thought of the film. Now, granted, yeah, these are their opinions; they're entitled to them and everything. But you can't help but feel like I think you're missing the point with with some of these. But like I've seen people online say that like it's trying to teach kids it's okay to disobey your parents. And it's like, that's not what the lesson was at all, actually. This movie is like, making it feel like it's okay for children to have sex. Again, not the whole point of the movie at all. I don't even think they bring up sex in this movie at all. She says the word sexy because she's describing how she like looks at boys now and she finds them attractive. And to me, it's just very much a lot of people who are much older than us, a whole different age group, seeing an animated form take on this whole thing, and they're not used to that. Something with the name Disney, stuff that they grew up with, a studio they grew up with, now being shown like to be like, oh my god, like they're bringing up periods in this movie. They're bringing up us finding women finding boys attractive and everything. Why are they teaching kids this kind of stuff? And it's like, I don't know, maybe because, like, I just kind of kept up with cartoons even as I was growing up. Like, I wasn't like I was on Cartoon Network all the time, but I watched stuff like Gravity Falls, Adventure Time, stuff like that. I'll watch an episode every now and then. I'd be like, hey, I hear a lot of people actually talking about this, Avatar, stuff like that. And it's like, no, kids shows were honestly, like, it's just been the way kids shows have been progressing throughout years, that they've been tackling more mature adult things. And so we get people, critiquing it, saying it's unrelatable. I don't understand why they're doing this. What was it? There was one review, and as Steve was saying, that like this reviewer got like attacked. But it was the review
drug.
The review on Cinema Blend, where basically editor Sean O'Connell faced a ton of backlash from his now deleted review, which many users called sexist and racist. Where this is one of the quotes from the review. I recognize the humor in the film, but connected with none of it. By rooting Turning Red very specifically in the Asian community of Toronto, the film legitimately feels like it was made for Dami Shi and friends and immediate family members, which is fine, but also a tad limiting in its scope. So, I mean, I guess if this movie took place in America and the main character's name was, I don't know, Donnie Parker or something, maybe she would be a more relatable person for old Sean here. But, like, for me, I felt like it was relatable at times. Dom brought up good points about what the panda can mean to various people and everything. And so you had people just subtweeting it and everything. Subtweeting at everybody critiquing this film. One of my favorites is, this is the one I was talking about, is that Turning Red is a cringe because 13-year-old girls don't. And then she says, let me stop you right there. When I was 13, I wrote a story about how Legolas fell in love with me and how I went to Middle Earth, and then Aragon also fell in love with me. We are cringe. We are legion. And it's like, again, it's just how time was moving. I'm sorry that the Pixar animated film didn't have your, 60s, 70s, 80s standards when growing up as a kid, that now they're catering to stuff we grew up with and stuff that this generation is growing up with in terms of humor and context to what they can put in a story.
I want to see that reviewer's review on A Bug's Life and see if that was relatable. Like, I don't know if he's lived among the crickets and the ants before. No, I love it when dudes tell on themselves that they haven't talked to women before, or like they haven't, or like when, or like when women tell on themselves that they had a really like lame childhood, like they never tried doing shit. Which, hey, low key, I kind of did too. But also, my dad was a hippie, so I didn't need to like fight that much of a part. Let me say this. I definitely connected with some of the overbearingness between the mom and the daughter, but not that much. Like, people have been like texting me. It's like, oh wow, did you like really connect with like the Asian overbearingness? A little bit, but like,
Dom,
my dad was smoking pot at like 15. Yeah, exactly. My dad was the rebel. But anyway, yeah, dude, this is so stupid. But like, no, really, like the people who make those kinds of reviews are the same people who needed like bao explained to them when the mom ate the bao. Like they needed that, like,
Yeah.
they didn't get that right away. It's like, why'd she eat the dumpling? I'm like, okay, sure, whatever. Yeah, okay, cool. But yeah,
there's the people that are like, man, I cannot wait for Despicable Me, Rise of Minions to come out. Like, I'm just gonna say that. All right,
they need
their animated film.
They need like their entertainment spoon fed or something. And the one kicker, and there's a good embedded tweet in this article about and it's a woman that's talking about like one criticism, and it's not just critics, like it's not just these pretentious, pompous people that like to write, such as myself. It really isn't. I mean, if you look at the audience reaction to this, I even think the Rotten Tomatoes score, that's not really a benchmark for any sort of thing to begin with. Yeah. But it's divisive. It really is. It's lower than you think. And some of the responses from parents are less than thrilling on this one. But one of the common complaints is how it teaches kids to disobey their parents. And this woman composed this Twitter thread that was really excellent, because I saw this, and then I even thought of a few of these examples that she's listed. She goes to the people that are saying that, like, you know, with Malin sneaking out of the house is a bad example of disobeying parents. She goes on, she's like, Mulan disobeyed her parents, stole her father's armor, and fought in a war as a man. Ariel ran away from home to go make out with some random prince she saw on a boat once. Like, you have like Jasmine here. Jasmine disobeyed her father and ran away to become a street rat. Never mind that she flew away on a magic carpet ride to date with a prince she met a while ago.
Brave, you know shot an arrow, or whatever her name was in that movie.
There's so many. I even think Riley fits the bill in Inside Out. Like, yeah. You know, there's so many examples. Breaking news: kids don't always listen to their parents, and oftentimes they get their comeuppance. Their uppance comes. Like, it's the way it is. I didn't think that what Malin did is outlandish compared to the acts of some 13-year-olds, you know, of like sneaking out or disobeying parents or lying about where you are. Put a finger down if you've done one of those things.
What 20% of all cinema is just parents telling their kids telling their parents to fuck off. Like that's like 20% of all stories ever told in humanity is just that.
Yeah, my grandmother used to piss me off, and it still does. My grandmother would always call me the young wise man, and it was such the most condescending thing on the face of the earth. I still get pissed. When she says that, the young wise man, like it's an old parable or something. But no, I think that there are valid criticisms of this. And if you want to say this movie's limiting in scope because of the specificity of location, time period, and I guess Asian, you know, Canadian Asian culture, you can say that. But I'm going to say this, though, too. The story, I think, I don't know, maybe Universal's a stretch, and it's hard. I'm not a woman, so I can't really say this, but I do think, you know, women make up 50% of the damn world. Like, I do think that there's a lot of universality in this story when it comes to women. And if we men can't relate to it on a, like, the basic level, there's elements of this thing that I think transcend any kind of, that may be more prominent for certain races, you know, like Asian Americans, Asian and Canadians and stuff like that. But I think the crux of like trying to be loyal to your parents and loyal to maybe your heritage, or just, bound to the lessons and values you were taught while trying to figure out who the hell you are as a person. Yeah. I think that's pretty damn universal. And I think that it's hit on the head pretty effectively in the movie.
One of my favorite replies to the Rotten Tomatoes score being like at 66% currently from an audience score is, one guy goes, "Damn, I didn't know so many bad, insecure parents use Rotten Tomatoes."
True. That's a good mic drop to end on. That'll do for today's Sleepless with Steve. We talked a lot of Pixar today, and we are totally switching gears. I can't wait this weekend. Next weekend, we're talking about X, the new Ty West movie. That is another one that I feel like's kind of come out of nowhere. It's been a minute since Ty West has made a movie. He's responsible for The House of the Devil. And I always get him confused. I have to look this up briefly to see if he did the movie. He did the Sacrament. That was the one I was thinking of. I always want to say that he did You're Next, but he's in You're Next. I always confuse him with Adam Wingard, because who's another young horror movie director. Mm-hmm. But he did The Sacrament, which, if you haven't seen that one, is an excellent horror movie. That's an excellent cult movie. The Innkeepers is really good. He did direct, but he eventually disowned Cabin Fever 2. But this movie, X, comes out this weekend, and we're making Dom sit through another horror movie over here, so he's going to be a trooper this weekend. And we salute you. For Dom about to witness a horror movie, we salute you.
Thank you.
So we'll get to that this coming weekend. In the meantime, great show. Highlights posted on the YouTube channel on which you are watching this episode right now. Thanks for joining us tonight. For Steve Pulaski, myself, Joe Viso, and Dominic Guanzon, this has been, and it's still so good to be back, Sleepless with Steve.